Hi, this is Michael Kohler with Coral Castle Explained. I just wanted to shoot a quick little video on how I was able to make the initial correlation between the mathematical concept of phi, Ed's Sweet 16, and how that all fits together with the Coral Castle itself on a physical structural basis. Okay, let's begin. When I initially visited the Coral Castle back in 2006, I was intrigued by what I saw. I took hundreds of photos and was amazed by everything that Ed had done, wondering how a simple individual could accomplish all of this on his own. But it wasn't until I returned home that I began to contemplate the different aspects of the Coral Castle. It wasn't a simple megalithic structure that consisted of large stones placed in a haphazard order, nor was it a series of megalithic stones placed in straight lines like you see at Carnac in northwestern France. Nor was it a simple circular structure like Stonehenge, which is found in southern England. This megalithic structure incorporated many different things. It had a variety of different shaped coral pieces, like the ones that he brought from him with Florida City, and they were formed in the shape of tables, chairs, moons, and other figures. It had a very special structure called the 9-ton gate. That was a piece of coral that was so perfectly balanced that a child, before it was broken in 1985, could spin it around completely with the touch of a finger. The Coral Castle also incorporated engineering feats that should not have been possible by a man with a fourth-grade education. Not only did the Skalnin incorporate astronomical figures, such as Venus, Mars, and Saturn into the complex, but he also aligned the Coral Castle to the cardinal points and created a 25-foot-tall, nearly 30-ton megalithic block called the Polaris Telescope, which is perfectly aligned with the North Star. Therefore, I was not only looking at a structure that was created by a man that seemed to have advanced knowledge of weights and measures, but a person that was able to find the exact pivotal point of multi-ton blocks and incorporate astronomical engineering into his work, something that a man with a background in the lumber industry should not have known. But the greatest discovery that I made, and the one that set me on the path to writing my book, Coral Castle Explained, was the discovery of a mathematical concept called phi, a concept that seems to be incorporated into the very complex itself. I was alerted to the use of this mathematical concept as a result of a sculpture that Ed had made, which sat at the southwest corner of the Coral Castle complex. It consisted of a wide variety of seashells and an anthropomorphic figure with jeweled eyes, which I call the monkey in the shells. In a previous video, I have documented that the mathematical concept of phi is the mathematical foundation of all things in nature. Not only do naturally growing plants and animals have this concept built into them, but it is also found throughout the universe, something that is shown through the mathematical science of fractals. Phi, which can also be found by averaging the numbers of the Fibonacci sequence, can also be represented not just mathematically and in natural spirals, but it can also be represented in a geometric rectangular format. So for some reason I began to wonder if this mathematical concept was incorporated into the Coral Castle itself. Research that actually began with a flyer that you could pick up at the Coral Castle. This diagram seemed to be a representation of the Coral Castle as if it is seen from overhead. This representation was in rectangular format, something that I assumed was a realistic representation of the castle itself. And by laying over the rectangular and spiral format of phi over this rectangular representation of the Coral Castle, it seemed to be a perfect match, showing that Ed had incorporated phi into the Coral Castle complex. And knowing that the numerical representation of phi was represented by the number 1.618, I equated this number to his mythical Sweet 16, the numerical reference that he used for Agnes Scuffs, the Latvian woman that jilted him at the altar many years before, prompting his departure from Latvia, which eventually brought him to southern Florida. However, when looking at the actual overhead view of the Coral Castle using Google Earth, I realized I had made an error. The Coral Castle was not actually rectangular in shape. It was actually square. I was sure that my theory was correct, but in light of the new visual evidence, I wondered if I was completely off track. It was then that I remembered the trapezoidal structure of the seashells with the anthropomorphic face of the monkey, and I realized I might actually be right. This sculpture that you see here, specifically the monkey, here is a close-up, was facing north, directly looking at the edge of the north wall. And at the base of the edge of the north wall, there was a six-pointed, star-shaped chair sitting on the ground. In my other videos, I have shown that this shape, the six-pointed star, is used in various locations. In fact, this geometric shape is used more than any other throughout the entire complex. Although many people have believed that the star shape was representative of many different things, including the fact that Ed may have been Jewish, in the book Mr. Kent is Dead by Orville Irwin, a close friend of Ed, Orville reveals that Ed confirmed he wasn't Jewish at all, but that the six-pointed star was merely representative of patterns in nature. With this new knowledge, I began to search for the word phi online, along with the term patterns of nature, and this led me to understand how phi 1.618, also called the golden ratio, or the golden number, is the foundational mathematical basis for all things in the universe and may have actually been incorporated by Ed into the structure of the Coral Castle itself. So armed with this new information and my new overhead view of the Coral Castle, I was able to realize that my theory of phi and its incorporation into the castle was correct. Taking the position of the trapezoidal structure with the seashells and drawing a line, which you can see here, across from the trapezoidal structure to the six-pointed star chair, I again had my rectangular form, the same rectangular form that geometrically represents phi mathematically. As you can see from these superimposed rectangular representations of phi, it seems to fit perfectly within the confines of the area that I have outlined. And in my book, I go into greater detail about how phi can actually be seen in multiple locations by using the same spiral phi-based format that you see here. So based upon this correlation between the geometric form of phi represented at the Coral Castle, his repeated use of the six-pointed star, and his continual reference to his Sweet 16, I made the conclusion that phi may also be the foundational basis for how Ed built the castle, and also what his secret was, yet another clue that he left behind in regard to how he built this 1,100-ton megalithic structure.